What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Whiteboard Wednesday. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you some training footage as well as some competition footage of very similar stage designs. But more importantly, talking about what I'm doing in the processes that I'm trying to focus on when training for practice, but also to see how I do in reality when it comes to shooting that similar style of stage in a competition setting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the first video. Now, just to give some context, this was a part of my practice for the 2024 PRS finale. And what I was doing was kind of just cycling back and forth between two rifles as I let my main rifle cool down. Because again, I just wanted to get reps in. And I had this ended up being my backup rifle for the finale, which is my 6.5x47, running the 140 ELDMs. And I had a bunch of practice ammo, or a bunch of ammo that I had left over from the gap grind. So I was just expending it, and I figured I'd just use that rifle specifically for barricade practice. Now, one of the things that I just really wanted to build in were my processes when it came to engaging two targets from one position, whether it be right to left, near to far, whatever the case is. And you'll see for this stage specifically, it's a near to far engagement with a pretty good pan. But I will say, one of the things that I can't control at this moment is the target size, right? That kind of bites me when we start seeing the next video. As well as obviously the target locations. Because I'm so familiar with that range, everything's going to be moving a lot faster than it typically would in a competition setting, just because I know this range like the back of my hand. And yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. But essentially, I decide 5 targets, or I pick 5 targets, which is a 545-yard target and a 600-yard target, and just like before, I'll show you where they're at in relation to me. So the very first target, let's put it right here. So firing position is down here. And the first target is actually on the right side of this berm here. So that's target number 1. And then the second target is over here. This is target number 2. Again, this distance to here is about 600 yards. And then this distance to here is about 545 yards. And what you don't see is I've got a left to right wind, 3 to 5 miles per hour. So I ended up starting off with 0.3 left dialed into my gun. Oh my God, that was so smooth that I thought it was an empty chamber. I thought I didn't have a magazine in. Two tenths, started with 3 tenths left, 545, 600. Clean run. Again, one of the things I really just wanted to focus on was just making sure that I was dialing in between each target, as well as, getting used to dialing for windage. I'm in the camp that at the end of the day, when it comes to shooting as precisely as you can, or if you're shooting small targets, the best way to be precise is by dialing your elevation and your windage. Because a lot of you guys have been asking, like, hey, why don't you ever hold? And because the target sizes are getting smaller and smaller in competition, I know that dialing is going to be my best bet if winds are consistent, right? And if I feel I have enough time to dial between each target. Now, just coming out of the 2024 PRS finale, there was a couple times where I did time out, but I felt like that was more or less as a result of poor target acquisition or mental errors. I didn't feel like by dialing that I was losing out on time. So again, I think that as a rifleman or precision rifleman, you should know when to employ each techniques. And I decided to employ the technique of dialing for both elevation and windage for this specific stage. So let's go ahead and watch this footage and ground my bag, ground my rifle. And because of how leading up to this, with the amount of hiccups I was having, and what I mean hiccups is because of how scatterbrained I was during practice with a lot of moving parts, I kept starting a stage without a magazine inserted in my rifle. It'd be in my pocket. So that's why when you see me run the bolt the first time, I literally thought just that, is I started this stage again without my magazine. Maybe because my mind was elsewhere, but you could see that I thought, oh my gosh, that was so smooth that I thought it was an empty chamber. It was an empty chamber. I thought I didn't have a magazine in. But find this first target, relax, and what I'm looking, recoil management looks good, but really what I'm looking at for my position here is, okay, am I consistent with my processes when it comes to engaging that first target and moving to the second one? So what I'm looking at is, do I start moving with my lower body position, and am I dialing in between each target, which I am. That's the processes that I wanted to build for myself. Because one thing that I cannot do at this moment is feel what I'm feeling with regard to like what pressures I'm putting. I can kind of remember, right? But I'm also paying attention to when it comes to my trigger cam is like, okay, hey, how much recoil management do I have, right? So essentially, because this is all subconscious for me, I'm just making sure that, hey, my recoil management still looks pretty good, even though that was about a 0.4 or a 4 mil, movement. I was able to keep that target. It's still inside of its field of view. So when I make my transition, I separate the rifle and the bag. I typically do that. And then you'll also see, right, that I keep both the rifle and the bag together. Honestly, there's no wrong answer, but at the end of the day, it is important that you get your bag placement where you want it. And I found that until you're able to really master the rifle and bag completely together, I would separate them. If you're a newer shooter, keep them separated so that you can get the bag grounded on your prop the way that you want, and then introduce your rifle on top of that. I've seen shooters struggle with bag placement or fight their position because they don't have proper bag placement on the Barricade. So I dial back down and find the target. And I'm looking at my recoil management and my follow through here. So I would take my shot, right, recover, and I'm making sure that my finger's still on the trigger. Here, I'm bringing the rifle down just to see exactly where that bullet's going, and it hits. And I'm paying attention to how long does it take me to process that information. All right. I mean, honestly, that was 8 frames. So less than, 0.3 of a second before I'm transitioning. So here's that where I keep both the rifle and the bag together, right? But notice how I set it down. I'm being mindful of how I'm placing my bag so that I'm taking advantage of the bag placement there and making sure that it's with the stability that I want. All right, hit that target, transition. Notice how when I transition, I'm moving with my lower body position. Pay attention to this here. I'll back up. All right. So I overshoot with my lower body position, but it's important that we move with our base. Our upper body will always follow. And, you know, that allows us to set up our natural point of aim and our ability to manage recoil the best way that we possibly can. Take this next shot, transition, dial. So I'm happy with the fact that I'm sticking to my processes. I'm dialing in between each target set. I'm keeping my face as close to my eye relief. I talked about in my previous videos. I'm keeping my face as close to my reference point as possible. Here, I separate both the rifle and the bag. And here, I honestly, if I were to critique myself, I didn't like the way that I grabbed the bag. I should have grabbed the bag more center, right? More center of the bag so that I can equalize the fill versus grabbing it at the top here. Because you can see when I place the bag down, right? All of the fill now shifted over down to the bottom, and now I have to, you know, make corrections to the bag placement. Whereas like if I would have just grabbed it in the center of the bag and place it, I don't think I would have had that issue. Granted, I still have plenty of time, but I see a lot of shooters struggle with that in terms of like how they grab their bag. And then when they place their bag on the prop, you know, it's not where they want it or how they want it, and they end up finding their position the whole time. Take my breath, recoil management looks good there, transition, dial. And there I went from 3/10 to 2/10 because I noticed that I hit the left side of the plate. And I'm just trying to, again, be proactive about making sure that I am, you know, getting as close to the center of the target as possible. So again, clean run, super happy with obviously the fact that I was able to, you know, work on my processes of making sure that I was dialing because I wanted to build a habit of that and just, you know, increase my speed. You know, at the end of the day, that is what I'm doing is getting the reps in so that knowing that the more times that I do it, speed will come. Whereas before, I would say, you know, if I would have shot like this stage maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you would have seen me hold, right? And if I would have dialed, I would probably have taken more time, or my processes would have been a little bit more, you know, clunky. So that is this stage in practice. We're going to shift gears to now the 2024 PRS finale, which I just shot over the weekend, and specifically the PRS Skills Stage, which is a very similar stage to what I just practiced. Now, a couple things here is number one, now I'm in a competition setting, and number two, I'm no longer at my home range, and number three, target sizes, or as you'll see, are a lot smaller. And number four, because I'm in a competition setting and leading up into this stage, this was stage 6 for me, and I had only dropped 2 points. So mentally, I was getting into my head of like, you know, I was performing a lot better than I was anticipating going into this match. So the you know, thought processes of placing a lot higher than what I expected going into this match started to creep into my head, to where, you know, my jitters from the first stage was lasting a lot longer than I wanted them to throughout the day. You know, overconfidence also kills, because I've seen this Barricade, I've seen this style of shooting. Obviously, I just practiced it, or I was practicing that a lot. I was thinking that it was going to be just another free throw, but I was completely wrong, as you guys will see here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start this PRS Skills Stage.
9 from squad 3. We can use help grabbing grass. Impact! Impact! Impact!
That was super tough to put together and rewatch just because, again, leading up to this, overconfidence and knowing that because I've, ran a stage like this hundreds of times, right? The fact that on game day, I dropped 2 points, really shattered my ego. But we're here, we're debriefing it, we're talking about what I'm seeing and what I think I could do better to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Or have better control of, again, just the overall outcome of a stage like this. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So I start and everything looks the same, very similar. I ground my bag, find the target, increase my magnification. And that's one thing is I made sure that at the start of every stage that when I looked down at my trigger cam to make sure it was on, I also looked at my magnification to make sure that I wasn't punched in to, let's say 15 or 18 power where I typically shoot at. So I started typically around 10 to 12 to make sure my field of view was wide enough. And that's one thing that, based off of this view that I'm doing here, you can't see my true field of view. This is obviously limited, right? But I do the best I can to open my field of view to acquire targets a lot more efficiently. But there's no wind here. I need to just hold straight up. The only thing I'm dialing for is elevation. So I take my shot, I hit that, and everything looks good. Everything looks very similar to how I practiced that previous stage, right? I'm happy with the way that my wobble zone looks. I'm happy with the way that I'm transitioning, right? But I'm more or less happy with, how I'm sticking to my processes of what I just practiced. I dial, I hit target, move and dial, find the next target, transition, dial back down, settle the bag in, find the next target, right? But now here I'm noticing my wobble zone is just, mentally I know that remembering where I'm at this point, I'm a lot more jittery than I want to be, and I can just feel myself letting go of just the basic, because at this point, I believe I was more outcome focused than process focused. And what I mean by that is my outcome of like, hey, I need to clean this stage versus process focus of like, okay, hey, relax. You've done this millions of times. Breathe, reticle, relax, squeeze. And this is where the mental game comes in to when it comes to performing and shooting at a high level, especially in competition. Because again, I've done this plenty of times. And so I pull this one low and left there. And again, this is super hard to watch because it's just like I'm kicking myself in the butt. But if I look at the center of this wobble zone, the center of this wobble zone is on the left side of that plate where my natural point of aim should have, again, whether it's moving my lower body position or how I'm driving that gun, I should have brought that rifle over a little bit, a tenth to the right. But as I break that shot, going frame by frame, I break it low left and I miss low left of that target. And that's one thing that's hard to see, especially with how small the targets are at and the different type of terrain, is where exactly your bullets are going. But because I knew I pulled that shot low and left, it wasn't a wind issue. I knew that I just needed to slow down. So I get these next two. more or less, I'm happy that even though I missed that target, I stuck to my processes of what I've been practicing, making sure that I'm dialing between each two, because I've seen shooters fall apart as soon as they experience their first miss, where now they're forgetting to hold and dial or whatever their system or game plan was going into a stage like this, right? And I saw that actually a lot for the PRS finale, because there was a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 1, near far, all these different crazy sequence combos where shooters, once they experience miss, because you don't really anticipate that, especially when there's no wind. And you know, a lot of this is being able to stick to your processes. I say that as I, you know, was outcome driven, but sticking to, you know, the process of, okay, hey, I need to make sure that I'm dialing for each target, because that is what my game plan is. And don't worry if you do miss, you know, figure out what went wrong and try to recorrect it. So I get to this third position here. Again, at this point, I think I was a little frustrated that I did miss my first shot. And based off of, I think one thing, if you can tell, is the RO is like right next to me in my face, because I was running the can, so she wanted to get time. And so because of how she was looking in my peripheral at the timer, I almost felt like I was running out of time. So I think I also sped up and pull that shot low and to the left and get this last shot here, right? Which honestly, I barely caught the bottom left side of that plate. So that is, you know, my performance. You know, I ended up getting 8 out of 10, and again, not my best run for a stage like this, but hopefully there's some good training takeaways there with regard to paying attention to, you know, maybe focusing on your processes versus outcome focus, right? I'll play a little bit back here in terms of, you know, the center of that wobble zone, because I think I realized I haven't really writing too much on the whiteboard. So let's go back to the shot where I missed here, and let's talk about the wobble zone here. So as I come into the target, I'm going frame by frame here. As I come onto this target, right, I would say right around here, I am taking out the slack of that trigger press, and I'm looking at my wobble zone, and I get this false zone where the right side of the center. So essentially how I look at this is my wobble zone is like realistically in this area. Okay. And so I'm now on the right side, pretty much right side of my natural point of aim with that wobble zone. And I decided that because I thought I was good, as I'm pressing through my shot, I end up going down into the left of that plate. Okay. So that's why it's important to take as much time as you can, you know, only move as fast as you can accurately engage, so that you can get your wobble zone. You know, realistically, I would have wanted the center of my wobble zone to be, I know you guys can barely see that because of how small the plates were, but that wasn't necessarily the case. All right. So that's how I analyze that in terms of where my natural point of aim truly was in relation to, you know, my wobble zone and how much movement that I was having in that specific position. And same thing when it moves to the next last position, first target here. All right, so close my bolt, all right? And so here, from here to about here, all right, the center of my wobble zone is, again, somewhere around, like, my wobble zone area is roughly there around the plate. And the plate, you can barely see it, the plate is here. This is the plate, about 8 inches wide, so at 400 yards, that's about a 2 MOA plate. So you can see that because my plate is here and in the red, it signifies my wobble zone. I mean, I was really, not taking advantage of centering that wobble zone up. Okay, so I should have taken the extra, half a second, because clearly I had plenty of time. I don't know why, and this is where having a timer helps, potentially, because I had no intentions of trying to win the skill stage. I just wanted to get my impacts, because I knew that I was pretty fast in general. And even if I run it at my slow pace, I typically will, beat out, in my opinion, most of the shooters that use all their time, because at the end of the day, impacts matter. So that was, definitely a learning experience for me when it came to the PRS Skills Stage. So yeah, super painful to rewatch, but this is why I do this. I'm able to learn and figure out, okay, hey, how can I do better next time, and make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. So I'm glad to be able to share some of my shortcomings with you guys, so that we can all learn and get better as a community. So again, I know this was very kind of competition focused. I try to do the best I can to hit all avatars of precision rifle shooting. Some takeaways: if you're new to competitive shooting, this is definitely a stage that you should practice in your training, to obviously work on your time management, your processes of engaging two targets. Again, try to dial, try to hold, try to figure out which style that you prefer based off of, again, how much time you have, as well as how big the targets are, as well as if you're a mid-pack to a top level competitor watching this, right? The biggest thing is making sure that, hey, doing this as many times until, again, you can't get it wrong. As they say, the differences between amateurs and professionals, but more or less, if you are competing, you are eventually going to run into a stage like this, so you should be practicing it, as often as you could. But if you're not competitive shooter, a stage like this, like I talked about in the previous video, if you focus on the training tasks that a stage like this offers you, is it trains your ability to engage targets from a kneeling supported position, and it trains your ability to engage targets from a standing position. It trains your ability to transition from a kneeling position to a standing, trains you to engage targets at different distances. The list goes on in terms of like how I'm peeling back the layers of like what I'm being asked to do. And again, if you want to set up this same exact stage, head over to the precisionrifleseries.com, and you'll be able to see their rulebook and exactly how to set up the stage. And it even gives you the dimensions of the barricade that you would want to build in terms of the height, because I'm 5'10", so these, heights for me I don't have any issues. But I know if you're taller or even shorter, some shooters struggle, especially depending on the size of their bag, with positions like that. So all of that information on how to set it up and the barricade height will all be in the PRS rulebook. That's all I got for Whiteboard Wednesday this week. Hopefully you found value out of this video. Let me know if you guys have any questions about shooting off of Barricade. And again, if you're new to my page, welcome. If you're trying to get into long range and you're on a budget, check out my Tika vlog. Got 8 episodes now. If you struggle with the prone position or you struggle with managing recoil, check out a couple videos I have about my rifle to shoulder connection. If you like listening to podcasts, I've got a podcast. And also I've got other Whiteboard Wednesdays, very similar to the style, where I diagnose either my shooting videos or other shooters. So appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you guys in the next video. And remember, you have control.